Oh, hey there. Glad you guys could join me and welcome. Today I'm going to talk about a lot of the things that stumbled me up when I was first getting involved in fragrances. There were a lot of terms being thrown out. There were a lot of things people were doing that I just didn't understand. And so this is add value to your life and your fragrance collecting journey. I know once I learned these things, I kind of understood what a lot of the fragrance reviewers were talking about, what I value to you by giving you the definition of some of these meanings and terms so that when you hear them, you'll better know. If you guys are pros at this, then this will just be a refresher course for you. Let's get started. So the first term I want to talk about is the term linear. Linear is a fragrance not confined to a pyramid. Its structure begins with a certain aroma and continues unchanged until you can no longer discern the scent. So that's what linear means. It's just the scent pretty much stays the same from the time of the initial spray all the way until the end. As most scents are composed of a pyramid, and that's something I'll talk about here in just a second. But linear fragrances, basically when you spray them, you smell that scent at the beginning and you'll smell it all the way through to the end of the fragrance until you no longer can smell it anymore. So when you hear that term linear, that's what that means. A note is not just something you hear in music class or when you're playing a song. A note is actually the ingredients found in a fragrance, such as citrus you'd get from an orange, or a leathery note, or coffee note. Those are all notes that can be found in a fragrance. Next thing I want to talk about is what we call a pyramid. A pyramid's not just something you see in Egypt. Pyramid is actually how fragrances are composed of. There's a top note, there's a mid note or the heart note, there's the base note or the dry down note. The top, which I didn't know, that was something that was unusual for me. I thought a fragrance was a fragrance, and I think most guys who aren't into fragrances or who are just getting started in fragrances really don't know that there is a pyramid in your higher end fragrances. And that was something that was very new to me and very foreign to me. I just sprayed a fragrance and thought that was it, and I was good to go. But it's really important to know that there are the top note, a mid note, and the dry down or the base note. The reason for that is a lot of times when you go into a store or department store and you test out a fragrance, you get that initial spray, you're like, man, this smells so good, and you're off and running and you think that's how the fragrance smells and you buy it. But then when you get home, you're now stuck with a $100, $200 fragrance because you thought that's how the fragrance smelled on your first initial spray, when actually there was a 3-tier part, and on the dry down it smelled completely different than when you first initially sprayed it. So that's the best way to test a fragrance, in my opinion, is really not on the strip. So let's say you have a fragrance like Acqua di Gio. You spray that on your arm and you get that initial aquatic scent and it smells really wonderful. And then what you do is you walk around the mall or you walk around the store for a good 10-15 minutes, wait for that fragrance to dry down, and then see what you're left with. And if you still like that smell after you've sprayed it, and I'll be honest with you, this is a good example of a linear fragrance because this one just does not change that much. But there are other fragrances that you smell that are aquatic and fresh and will change throughout the duration. And you might be left with something you don't like. But then also the opposite is true. You could spray something that you don't like at the beginning and it's harsh, but then by the time you get to the base or the dry down, you absolutely love it. And a good example of that is Armani, their clone of Creed Aventus. That fragrance, the first initial spray is so harsh, it almost smells like you're spraying a Pledge right on the table, and it stinks so bad, but by the time you get to the dry down, it's a masterpiece. And I get so many compliments from that fragrance. So those are ideas of why it's important to know that there are 3 bases to a fragrance, a pyramid, if you will. Like I said, your top, your middle, the hearts, and your base note, which is the dry down. It's important to know that because the fragrance could really change on you after a while. Another term is concentration. That's not just something you do in school or when you're trying to think really hard. Concentration is determined by the ratio of the perfume in relation to the alcohol. So some perfumes, some fragrances have more concentration of perfume than others. And so those concentrations are eau de cologne, which has the least amount of perfume in it, eau de toilette, eau de parfum, and then parfum has the most amount of parfum in it. Usually lasts the longest, usually has the best scent trail, usually has the best performance is your parfums. The lighter the parfum, less you smell it on your skin. Not always, but 9 out of 10 times. And I'd say the fragrances that have that parfum dominant in the fragrance are usually more expensive than, say, an eau de toilette or eau de cologne. So that's what concentration is in cologne. Again, you have your eau de cologne, eau de toilette, eau de parfum, and your parfum, and those are your concentrations. Siage, or siage as some people say, is a scent left by a person when they pass by. It's that scent trail. So there may be somebody who's wearing a really nice fragrance and you came in late and they just left the room, but you still smell them well after they're gone. That's the siage trail that they left. It's basically a trail of fragrance and they smell really good. You can smell it in the room well after they're gone. That is the definition of silage or siage, in case you guys didn't know. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is a flanker. When I'm a big sports buff, I love sports, so when I first heard the term flanker, I thought that meant something about football or rugby. I had no idea it referred to cologne bottles. So basically what a flanker is, in the easiest term possible, it's like the sequel to a really good movie. I'm sure you have. One of my favorite movies is Top Gun, and come to find out they're making a sequel to it. So basically what they're going to do is if it's a hit and it makes a ton of money, they're going to make a sequel because they want to keep cashing in and keep making money. That sold really well for them, so they're going to make another one. Some movies don't call for sequels, but they make them anyways. And some of them are disasters, some of them are hits. Some sequels are better than the original. Like Star Wars. Star Wars was amazing, but Empire Strikes Back was even better. So that's an example of movies or sequels that are better than the original. Some examples of flankers are the #1 selling cologne from the 90s, Acqua di Gio by Giorgio Armani. This is an all-time killer. This is one of the best fragrances in the world, best sold fragrances. Now, as far as performance and Siage and all that, that's up for debate. I'm sure you guys could argue for hours about that, but this was a great, great fragrance. This is pretty much what brought me to the fragrance game in the first place. But then they took the DNA of this fragrance and made the sequel, or the flanker, which is Acqua di Gio. And a flanker doesn't exactly have to have, this is Acqua di Gio Profumo. A flanker doesn't actually have to have the same DNA. It can also be the same packaging or something that's similar to it, but it doesn't exactly have to be the same scent for it to be a flanker. This flanker right here is an example of being better than the original Acqua di Gio. This one has an incense in it with that same DNA. It's a signature scent worthy fragrance. It just smells so good, has so much depth, it's so mysterious. If someone's wearing this fragrance, it makes me want to know more about that person. This is a great scent to have in your collection, and to me, it's way better than the original. So this is an example of a flanker where they actually made the second fragrance, and it was way better than the first. And actually, there are now a lot more flankers in the Acqua di Gio line, and you guys know what they are. Another example of a flanker is the original Dolce&Gabbana Light Blue, but they went ahead and improved on, this one was already good. I loved this fragrance, but they went ahead and improved on it with Dolce&Gabbana Light Blue Intense. And again, this fragrance is amazing. They added more pepper and more spice. It's fresh, aquatic, and it lasts longer. This one is a compliment killer, a beast in performance. It lasts a very long time on my skin, and it definitely leaves a scent trail, and I do get a lot of compliment. So again, that's an idea of a flanker. Performance. Performance is not just how you perform on a job. It's not how you perform in a bedroom. It's actually a term that has to do with your fragrance, how well it performs, how long it lasts on your skin after applying it. That is important to a lot of people. A lot of people do not like to buy, say, a fragrance like Nautica Voyage because it has poor performance. I happen to like Nautica Voyage because I'm one of the few guys who does not mind reapplying. I like to overspray. I'll spray the heck out, especially a fragrance like that that's really cheap, like a Nautica Voyage. I'll spray the heck out of myself. I don't mind doing it because it's so cheap and I can rebuy it again off of Amazon or wherever, some fragrance discount website. That's one of those fragrances that you definitely have to reapply and overspray because performance is poor, but I love the smells. So performance is definitely something that's important to a lot of you out there. Not so much to me, but I can understand why it is, because if you're going to part with your hard-earned money, you want that fragrance to perform well after the initial spray on your skin. So performance is another term you'll hear used in the fragrance community. So that is what that means. And projection of a fragrance is how people around you perceive your fragrance. You have to be there for the projection to work, as opposed to Siage, where Siage is that trail and it can be there well after you've left. Projection is you having to be present in front of that person and how they perceive that fragrance projecting off your skin, or how you perceive that fragrance coming off your skin, and how pleasant or unpleasant it may be to that person. So that is what projection means, and those are just a few terms. I want to keep this video short and sweet, and hopefully that helped. Hopefully that added some value to you guys. If it did, remember to always hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to tell other people about the video if you got some value off of it. Remember to hit that notification bell so you'll be reminded when other views come out. And remember to always be yourself, as long as yourself always smells good. Thank you.